Hi there. Let's talk about limiting beliefs for a moment. Limiting beliefs are the certainties and truisms that we hold about ourselves. I'll never be good at, I'll always really suck at, I've never been able to, I'm not a confident person, I'm not an outgoing person, I'm not a this, I'm not a that. Over time, these beliefs assume the status of fact and they come to define us, so that each time we approach a situation that we believe ourselves to be bad at, we create the perfect environment for failure. The reason this happens is because we are, by reminding ourselves that this never works or that we always really suck at this, we are programming our subconscious to filter elements of the environment towards us that support that view. Now, this is done through something called the reticular activating system. I don't want to get elbows deep in that because it's kind of a big subject, but think of it a little bit like your Facebook timeline. So every time you click on something, every time you like something, every time you read an article, Facebook's building up a picture of you and what you're into, so that, surprise, surprise, advertisements filter into your timeline that actually tally with the stuff that you're interested in. Articles that support your beliefs seem to crop up. This is very much how your reticular activating system works. Your subconscious brain will process about 4 million bits of information a second, and that's way more than the conscious brain can cope with. So your reticular activating system selects elements from that tumult of information and filters them to you, but it bases them on your beliefs, on your desires, what you need, what you want, and what you're afraid of. It dates from our really earliest ancestors, whose world was comprised really only of threats and opportunities. The reticular activating system selects the stuff that's important. But if we hold fast to a certain belief about ourselves, and let's suppose it's a limiting one, that we're always going to be bad at doing this, and the reticular activating system, because it's the subconscious part of the brain, it's not prejudiced in any way, thinks, all right, he's thinking about this, we will filter information that supports it. So if I think I really suck at doing presentations, when I stand up there, clear my throat and approach the whiteboard, I'm going to see a lot of evidence in the room around me to suggest that no one's listening, that they're all bored, and it'll be just as bad as it was the last 3 or 4 times I had to do this. So how do we prevent that from happening? Well, the answer isn't to be relentlessly and consistently positive about absolutely everything we encounter. Stage 1 is to decide what your goals are. What's really important to you right now? Is it securing a promotion at work? Is it getting better at a particular thing? Is it meeting someone special? If this is your goal, that's where we start. We work on the beliefs, the limiting beliefs, that are impinging on that and affecting that. We don't have to worry if we've got a limiting belief that we don't like rom-coms, or we wouldn't enjoy a holiday in Benidorm. If that's not part of what we really want, it really doesn't matter if we're still carrying around a few other limiting beliefs. So take a moment to think about what your particular current goal that you have, and be really specific about it. It's, if your goal is to, have a lot of money, think about what that's actually going to get you. That's your goal. Okay, take some time with that one. Okay, let's get something clear. History does not repeat itself. We do. As human beings, we're predisposed to look for patterns in the world around us. It makes us feel safer, more secure, and good or bad, there's something reassuring about certainty. So when we tell ourselves that the last 3 blind dates we went on were an absolute washout, maybe we're still going to try again, but we're going to walk in there with that semi-reassuring certainty that it's almost for sure that it's going to go bad. But what we have to do during this stage is actually review the evidence for that happening, see if we can find out where it really started. I'll give you an example from my own experience. I think I'm a really bad dancer, and I don't think I'll ever really be good at it, although it's something I'd like to be able to do well. When I reviewed this, I realized that there was very little actual recurring supporting evidence for it, and where it all began was back in primary school, when I had to do country dancing with the rest of my class, and Mrs. Ross used to single me out and make me do it in front of everybody to everyone's, you know, tremendous amusement. I'm laughing about it now. It wasn't funny at the time, but that's where it began. That's where this limiting belief started. And when I think about it, there's very few things that have actually happened beyond me reminding myself that I'm crap at dancing. Very few things have actually happened to reinforce and support that view. I've done all that. History hasn't repeated itself. I've repeated myself. So when it comes to your limiting beliefs, see if you can get right to the bottom of where that began. And then I'd like for you to review the supporting evidence. Now, come on, be honest about that. If it's still really happening always badly each time, fair one. But if you're walking in there with the certainty that that's going to happen, well, there's your limiting belief. You need to go back a few paces and find out where that began. So the fourth thing I'd like you to do is remember who you are on a really good day. I don't know if you remember that really cool Berocca ad on TV. I never even found out what Berocca was, but the ad was brilliant. Those two lumberjacks dancing on a log and they're high-fiving each other. It actually had quite a cool tune. The strapline, Berocca, it's you, but on a really good day. So I'd like you to take a moment to think about that. And it doesn't have to be scoring a winning goal in extra time or anything. It could be that time you snagged the parking spot right outside the restaurant and looked good in front of everybody. It might have been the time you struck a line through the last item on your to-do list and realised there was still time to watch a couple of episodes of Outlander before bed. It doesn't have to be a world-changing thing. It just has to be an example of what you can do on a really good day. And I put it to you that these moments can define you every bit as effectively as your limiting beliefs. So when you tell yourself, oh God, I'm just not that kind of person, remember when you were that kind of person. It doesn't have to be directly related to your beliefs, but I want you to take a moment and think about you, but on a really good day and what that person's like. Okay, still with me? Step 4, let's talk about visualization. Productive visualization does not involve thinking about the outcome, about the end result. It's not about crossing the finishing line, reading that email that says you got the promotion or lifting the trophy. You don't need to practice that. That's the important bit. And those things, when you do them, they're daydreams. Visualization is something very different, and that involves creating a high definition 360-degree surround sound big screen version of what you need to do. And crucially, this doesn't involve, like I said, the sort of fantastic moment of victory. Actually, it's going to be a lot more productive if you can visualize yourself encountering the problems that you usually do with a certain thing that you've been struggling with, but this time you see yourself coping with it brilliantly. So if, suppose, for example, you think you really suck at presentations, well, see yourself losing the thread or losing that sort of key focus and forgetting the next line, but recovering it beautifully. And when we visualize stuff like this, we've actually got to put ourselves there. Now, I know it sounds a little bit far out, but stay with me for a moment. We've got to imagine how the room looks. We've got to imagine how we feel. Are we relaxed? Are we smiling? How are we appearing to other people? Even down to how does that whiteboard pen feel in our hand at that crucial moment? How does the meeting room usually smell? What are people's faces going to look like as they're looking at me doing my presentation? I'm going to digress just briefly for a moment. Jack Nicklaus, who's probably one of the most successful golfers in history, and I don't like write in and say, oh, you're wrong about that. I don't actually, I'm not into golf at all. He visualized every shot before he struck it, and he wasn't just seeing himself with that, yeah, I nailed it. It was the whole thing, from the ball landing right next to the flag to the beautiful arc it made through the air. Would come back to him standing looking relaxed and confident at the tee and making that perfect swing and connection with the ball, and he'd repeat it and he'd repeat it and he'd repeat it, so that when he stepped up onto the tee, he'd already been there. Because here's the thing, our brain doesn't distinguish between lived and imagined experience. We can actually reprogram it through some really full-on visualization to expect a very different outcome. It doesn't know the difference. Plenty of supporting evidence for this. I'm not going to get up to the elbows in it now. I'll try and put some links below. Okay, so if all of that sounded fairly straightforward, bad news, here's the hard bit. If you're going to reprogram your limiting beliefs, if you're going to reprogram your reticular activating, your subconscious, to filter supporting information about you being awesome on that day, then your visualization is going to have to, your visualizations are going to have to become a habit. Yeah, and there's the tough bit. We've got to be doing this as consistently and as often as we can if we're going to build and strengthen those pathways that see us performing brilliantly. That way the supporting evidence that we are going to do well will become clear to us. So in just the same way that a downhill slalom skier will ski the course in their mind 1,000 times, we have to see ourselves in that situation, encountering and overcoming those difficulties as many times as we can. Now, how many times do you check your phone each day? How often do you sort of drift off into space and stare out of the window? You can make the time for this, you can, but that's going to require some real discipline, and it's going to require you building up a really good picture of what it is you need to focus on. Because here's the thing, I seriously doubt if Jack Nicklaus spent a lot of time at visualizing himself lifting the cup. He knew he'd be able to do that, and it wasn't going to get him where he needed to be. He visualized those shots. He visualized himself recovering from a bit of a sort of, stumble or a missed shot and getting right back in there. This is what we need to do. Let me know how you get on. I would be really interested to hear. Comments section below, and let's hopefully talk again soon. Okay, thanks very much for watching.